The wooden objects, so Namatjira's wooden plaque and the turned the vessels, for want of a better word, out of the tree trunks, they really make me think about the layers and the layers within those trees, that within each ring of the tree is a record of the experience of that tree, I guess, the different minerals that were around, and like particularly I relate that to the area where I live, where we have one particularly enormous tree trunk or stump now, because it's been cut down, that I could hazard a guess it would be several hundred years old. And just to think about what that tree has witnessed and the experiences that are kind of embedded in its rings, to me is a fascinating link to looking at a diagram of the earth and the different layers of history embedded there. And the George French Angus book, I've made another work about that book in particular in the past, actually two, and he was a very early artist in South Australia's history and travelled South Australia making these depictions, and I come from the southeast, and Mount Schenk of course is a crater down in the southeast of South Australia, and I guess I'm particularly interested in the different time that is represented in that image compared to time now, and looking at the geological changes that happened as well. I think within my work I've pulled upon many aspects of the collections to talk about not only a history going back in time, but also a connectedness, I guess, between history and now, and many different ways of thinking about the world. So in making my cross-section works, I'm pulling on the idea of cross-sections in trees and the layers that build up around trees, or inside of the human body, or in my case the megafauna kangaroo tail and the different layers inside, but also I imagine the cross-section of the earth as well. And when you have a diagram of the earth and you look at the interior and all of the different layers that have built up. And I think the idea of layers and layers going back into history, which does relate to the collection, began for me when I was sitting at the bus stop one day, and with my interest in colonial history, looking at the buildings and the concrete and imagining all of the layers underneath there of not only earth but also people's experiences as well, and past animals, or all kinds of stories that have happened that are now buried under the upper layers. Yes, I think there's always a family history element that comes through in my work. My mum does a lot of family history study, so I'm constantly pulling on maybe stories or anecdotes. I think anecdote is the stories that are passed along that you're not quite sure if they're true or not, but they still carry a lot of meaning, and I don't discount them from my research alongside more scholarly essays or direct diary entries. I think stories and the way that they change over time are indicative of values, and in our family we have a rich connection to the southeast of South Australia from very early on in the settled history of Australia. I think from 1838, so I often imagine the experiences that my ancestors could have had, and they play out in my work, particularly some more dramatic moments. I think the way that I make using time is a way of also making time at the same time, so a lot of times. I stitch in amongst a very busy life, and at night time in particular I make that time for thinking and think about the world in a different way. So by using repetitive crafting processes, I'm making time for contemplation, thinking about the histories of the world or Australia, or more locally and within my own families, and it's a way of using time to make time. Absolutely. I love it when my work escapes my own control and that I might have a certain direction for it, but the materials I'm using and what I'm reading and researching at the time can completely shape it in a new direction. And that to me is exciting with my practice rather than having a pre-planned way that I'm moving and executing it.